Hello, this is Coach Wilson, and this is Chapter 6, Section 1. Today we're going to begin talking about the executive branch. We spent much of Chapter 5 talking about Congress. Now we're going to begin talking about the President and various things surrounding the President. Now, first of all, we're going to talk about the qualifications to be a President. All right, they are found in the Constitution, and they say that you must be a native-born citizen, meaning that you must be born here in the United States. You must be 35 years of age, and you must have lived, in the U.S. for 14 years. So essentially, let's say that you were born here, then at 5 years old, your family moved to England, and you lived there till you were, 35, and then tried to come back and run for president. You couldn't do it. You have to be a resident of the U.S. for 14 years, okay? You must also, when you become president, serve a 4-year term. Okay, so if you're elected by the people, you serve a 4-year term, and you can serve a limit of 2 terms. Okay, and we talked a little bit about that in previous chapters. But after FDR was elected to 4 different terms, the very next president, Truman, I believe it's Truman, it might have actually been Lyndon B. Johnson, but I always get it confused where it started, but I'm pretty sure it's Truman, passed the 22nd Amendment. Okay, so I don't think we got all the way to Lyndon B. in the 60s. I believe it stopped there with Truman. So, characteristics of most presidents. Okay, they've all been male. We've never had a female president. We've had 43 white presidents and 1 African American, now 44. Okay, most were Christians. JFK was Catholic and Nixon was a Quaker. Most have attended college. Many were lawyers. Okay, and most had political experience. Obviously, Donald Trump was one of those that he didn't. I mean, he had a lot of business experience, but not necessarily a ton of political experience. Now, Vice President, okay, they essentially only have 2 official jobs. They're President of the Senate, which even then it sometimes was kind of a looked down upon position early on in our nation's history. And if someone was to happen to the President of the United States, the Vice President would be the one that would take power, okay? There are 9 Vice Presidents that have taken over the presidency since the founding of the nation. If you look back, one of those was Lyndon B. Johnson, I mentioned earlier. Harry S. Truman was one of those. There's been quite a few, like I said, over the years that have had to assume the role of president. But the new president gets to choose a new vice president, but it must be approved by Congress. So once the president dies, so let's say something happened to Joe Biden, okay, Kamala Harris would be the new president, and then she would select a new vice president. Now, if something was to happen to both of them, that's where things change, right? And we have what we call the order of presidential succession. Now, it was established by the 25th Amendment, and basically it tells us what happens if president and the vice president were to be killed, as well as it tells us if about 20 other high-ranking members of our government were to be killed, who is the next president. Now, first off, the vice president is the first one in succession. Then the Speaker of the House, then the President pro tempore, then members of the cabinet, okay, and then so on. Now, this list goes down. I think your book gave you a pretty good example of it. Let's see here. All right, so your book only stops at the cabinet members, okay, but I want to give you kind of a few of the successions after that. So essentially, they would pick members of the cabinet in order of which they were created, the actual positions themselves. Okay, it goes Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, Secretary of the Interior, and then there's a whole bunch more. There's roughly about, I think, 25 different people that can take the office of president. But if all of those people were to be killed, we would be left in a situation where there was no person that is technically by law supposed to be president. And the way that they avoid this is by creating a designated survivor. And we will talk about that more as we go on. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. Very, very kind of just, informational stuff, not a whole lot to discuss here at the moment, okay? But we will get more in depth as we keep going through the executive branch and kind of like Congress, guys. I told you this is just a This is just to make sure you understand how our government is organized and to continue kind of getting in depth as to what we need to understand about how our government functions. So that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, I'll talk